This is video 4.1 of the Blender 280 course, and this time we'll be talking about the object origin. Every object, be it a mesh or a curve, whatever, has an object origin, and it can be seen as this little orange dot inside the object. Now, it is important because that point in space is the actual location of the object. No matter what the mesh looks like, Blender thinks of that object as being placed where the origin is. The origin is also the point around which your object will move, rotate, and scale. Therefore, you may wind up in a situation where you want to move the object origin to a different place. And you can do that when you are in the object mode, and you can see this menu, and you can set the origin in these 5 ways. Geometry to origin will move the object so that the origin becomes the center of the object, or you can move the origin in relation to your mesh. You can also place the origin anywhere in the scene by selecting Origin to 3D Cursor once you have placed the cursor wherever you want it to be. There's also Origin of Center of Mass by Surface, Origin to Center of Mass by Volume. These are rather rare, I've never used them actually, but geometry to 3D geometry to origin and origin to 3D cursor are the ones that you will be using the most. Now, to move the origin away from the object, you can place the 3D cursor somewhere, and then say Object, Set Origin to 3D Cursor. And after this, your object will rotate around that point in space, no longer by the object itself, but by the 3D cursor. And even if you say rotate along an axis, you can see how it rotates around that point. And scaling also happens in relation to the origin. It doesn't happen in relation to the object itself. And if you return the origin to geometry and then scale, you can see the difference there. In the second video, in part 4, I will show you how to use the snap, but I will just quickly illustrate how to get the origin to be at a corner, on an edge, or exactly on a face. When you go into edit mode and you select a vertex, just one single vertex like so, and then snap the cursor to the selected part, move out of edit mode, and in object mode set origin to 3D cursor, you now have your 3D cursor and the object origin exactly in the corner there. This is useful sometimes. The same for an edge. Select the edge, Shift S, snap cursor to selected, and then move the origin to the 3D cursor, because now your object will rotate around this edge. Like so. And if you go to edit mode, snap, select a face, snap the cursor to it, and then say set origin to 3D cursor, your origin is now here on the top. Actually, in 3D printing, it's very, very important that you always have your origin at the lowest point of the object, because this is what is going to be printed the first. So this face has to be at the 0 elevation of the scene. So when you snap your cursor to world origin and the cube to the cursor, this would print perfectly because it is exactly on the grid. Now, there's another way of doing rotating around something else than your origin, and that is seen here in the pivot point, transform pivot point menu. First, you can have many objects and you can rotate everything around an imaginary box that has all the objects in it. You can rotate around the 3D cursor, you can rotate around individual origins, or the median point of these objects, or a bunch of objects around the active element. What this means is that if I have a couple of other objects here, like a UV sphere, put it there, and a cylinder, put it there, and select all of them, 1, 2, 3, and now I will say I will rotate around the bounding box center, which happens to be somewhere inside the cube. Or I can select 3D cursor, which is there, and now all of these will rotate around the 3D cursor. Or I can say individual origins. This is very useful if you have many things that you want to align to a certain direction, because now when you rotate, they all turn the same amount around their individual origins. And you can also say median point, and this is somewhere inside the area that contains all of these objects. And you can say active element, because I selected the ball last, it is the active element, and the other two are selected too, but they are orange in outline. This is yellow. So all the rotation will happen around the origin of the last selected object, i.e. active element. Mostly I leave this setting at individual origins, because usually you just want to rotate one of these anyway. So that was the object origin, and that was the pivot point.